Esteban, we got Cody on the line. What do you want to ask him?
What advice would you give to newbies in regard to keeping emotions in check when analyzing a deal?
Yeah,
So
hit it.
Esteban, I would tell you three things. Number one, education. Number two, repetition. And number three, analyzing larger deals for practice. The more that you continue to educate yourself, the better and more confident you're going to feel about your underwriting practices or analysis. And the next thing I would tell you is repetition. And this is key. So in learning a market in particular, or learning how deals are operated, the more that you do, the more that you learn.
Welcome to the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe with Four Oaks Capital. I'm very excited for today's show. We got two amazing people on the line with us right now. We got Cody Laughlin and Esteban Cardenas. Cody's a real estate entrepreneur, a podcaster, meetup host. He's got 10 years of real estate investing experience, and his focus is acquiring cash flow producing real estate assets with a special focus on value add multifamily. I'll drop the rest of his bio in the show notes for anybody else who wants to get the full bio. That's Cliff Notes version, but that said, Cody, welcome to the show.
Brian, good morning to you, man. Really appreciate the honor to be here and excited to be on your show, man. I've been a big fan.
Yeah, hey, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. It's been fun. Interestingly enough, tomorrow is the 1 year anniversary of episode 1. So you guys got the anniversary edition.
Congrats, man.
Yeah, congrats to you guys, being on the anniversary edition. So, but
I feel honored now. Now I feel like a VIP.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's exactly not coincidence whatsoever. But this was 100% planned a year ago. It's like anniversary edition is going to be Cody and Esteban, 100%. But
see, that's why we delayed getting us to this point, right? You remember we talked about swapping shows for a year now. So
a year, yeah, and we finally did. So yeah, that was a nice treat too. But it was probably just over a year ago. I think it was before the first episode was released that we talked about doing the show swap. But a year later, here it is. So happy to have you on the show. And do us a favor, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your history, and kind of walk us into how you got into apartment investing.
Yeah, thanks again, Brian. Really appreciate it. Again, big fan. Love what you're doing. Love the show format too. But my background, my introduction to real estate started in 2010. My wife and I relocated from Louisiana to Houston, Texas, about 2008. We bought our first home. And after about 2 years, we wanted to relocate to a different part of Houston. And for those who recall, 2008, 2010, great financial crisis, housing market was in the dumps. And in the process of relocating in Houston, we bought another home, closed on that home. Our first house did not sell yet, but it was under contract. And then we had a buyer that backed out the day before closing. And me and my wife panicked because we didn't know what the world to do. Number one, we couldn't put it back in the market. Things were moving too slow. Number two, we couldn't afford to pay 2 mortgages. And we were just like, what do we do? So we just hurried up and threw a tenant in there and said, you know what, we'll figure it out from there. So although it was very stressful at the time, in hindsight, it was a blessing because that's what really got me involved in real estate. And again, around that time was also studying really how to protect your wealth, how to build your wealth, how to invest in equities markets and retirement accounts. And somebody saw me and said, hey, have you read this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad? And, I joke, I call it the Purple Bible. And so I read it and, everything changed for me. Light bulbs went off and, just completely changed the trajectory of my entire life, really, because I was going to continue to go back to school, get a master's degree, go up a corporate ladder in my industry. And when I read that, I was just like, everything I had been taught had been incorrect, so fast forward through a few years, I had this new entrepreneurial spirit and I was excited to get out there and just try all these different things. And unfortunately, I took some detours from real estate and I tried some non-real estate related ventures that I learned a lot of expensive lessons from. But, again, all great seminars, as Rod Khleif would like to call them, and got recommitted back to real estate several years back. I started out in single family again. And really just because of a limited mindset, I didn't have any net worth, liquidity, any experience. And I was like, man, I really need to build my own capital base first. I need to, get out there and transact first. And So I started out doing single family flips and realized very, very quickly that I'm working myself into a second job. I still maintain my W-2.
Yeah.
I'm a father, husband. And here it is after work, I'm going to these flip houses and I'm dealing with the contractors. I'm running to the store every weekend. And I was like, this was not what I thought this was going to be. And, finally, a couple of years back, I had this epiphany moment and with one of my kids and realized, I'm in real estate to take control back of my time. I really want to be able to control that aspect of my life, but I can't, what I was doing. And that was the big moment that led me into transitioning into multifamily and realizing that I need to scale and scale much faster in order for me to be able to get to a scale where I can, again, take that control back of my time. And so that's kind of how I got into multifamily real estate and became active investor 2019. Trying to learn how to become an active investor. And through that, started passively investing, networking, following a lot of the industry leaders. And here we are today. We're co-GPs in 240 units and a deal here in Houston. Again, I'm a passive investor in an opportunity in Phoenix and, got a lot of other great things happening. So.
Yeah. So you became, I think, what a lot of people call an accidental landlord. There are a lot of stories start out like that. I did the deliberate landlord, and it was also a seminar. It was one of those things where, we held a property for 10 years. It never cash flowed, but it was Southern California. And so it appreciated, and it ended up being a nice little thing. But yeah, so accidental landlord, Purple Bible, which I think is probably the most common book that comes up on this podcast, is that Rich Dad Poor Dad. And then you get into flipping and then use another Robert Kiyosaki term. Sounds like you were carrying buckets instead of making the pipeline, right? You realize that, flipping houses is a full-time job by itself, and moved into apartments for, I think, the same reason a lot of people do, the ability to scale, the ability to step back from it. So anyway, that's awesome. So let's talk about one of those units one of those deals that you guys have done, and tell us about, just wave top information, how you found it, and how you closed and how it's doing.
Yeah, what I'd like to do is highlight the most recent acquisition that we're a part of. Again, our co-GP opportunity, and I think this is going to be important for those who may be just newer into the space, looking to find a way in, because it is a very, very competitive landscape right now. I mean, it was already competitive prior to COVID, but even more so now. I mean, the amount of liquidity out there is just insane. And so it is getting increasingly harder for the newer investor to break into the space. So, and we're part of that. We consider ourselves a part of that. Again, we've been in the active side since 2019. We had been building broker relations, sourcing deals, underwriting, making offers, but we just weren't coming close on anything. And then COVID hits, everybody took a big pause. And then when things ramped back up, again, all of a sudden you went from one of 10 to 12 offers to one of 30, And so, in the midst of the 2 years that we have been active, we've also been building a pretty large investor database, building a lot of great relationships. And so what we realize is, listen, we need to get our investor database engaged, right? We need to give them something to be excited about, something that they could be proud to work with us on. And so in the midst of us looking for opportunities, we said, hey, why don't we go and work with some of the operators that are in our markets that we know that have track records, that have experience, that may be getting opportunities that we're not getting exposed to, right? And that's kind of what led us into this 240 unit deal. We had a relationship with the lead sponsor, Jorge Abreu, with Elevate Commercial Investment Group. Known him for about, at this time, almost 2 years. And moving with a tremendous amount of momentum. At the time that we approached him earlier this year, he had, 600 units under contract, and he had a 1,200 unit portfolio here in Houston, where we're based out of. And so we were working on a deal in January, a big deal that we needed help on. We invited him to come participate. Long story short, the deal didn't work out. But what it did allow us to do is open that door for future conversations. And so, fast forward to, March or so this year, George had this deal. And we said, look, our value add that we can bring to the table is we can raise capital. We can help bring capital. We're here in Houston. We can be involved in the asset management boots on the ground, whatever you need us to do, we'd love to be a part of one of your opportunities if that's something. And that's kind of how it led us to this opportunity. And so, again, I tell people we're not the lead on it. George and his team are the lead, but we are active co-GPs in the deal. We did commit some capital from our investor database, and we are involved in some of the asset management stuff. And I think it's been a really, really great experience because you get to learn firsthand from somebody who, has a rather large portfolio, 2,500 plus units. You kind of see how the CapEx is timelines determined, how the CapEx budgets put together, where should you allocate certain CapEx dollars, right? Asset management, property management takeover, things like that. So it's been a really, really great experience for us.
Yeah. And there's a lot of keys there. I mean, we're talking about single family homes at the beginning, but there's a lot of parallels. I mean, I think a lot of people are familiar with the single family analogy. You go to an agent, who's the equivalent of the broker. You go to an agent and the first thing they're going to ask you is your pre-approval letter. Sorry about that. Yeah. They ask you for a lender pre-approval letter. They're vetting you out. They're seeing if you're a viable buyer or not. And it's the same thing in the multifamily space, except to be a viable buyer, and this is the conundrum, to be a viable buyer in multifamily, you have to own multifamily to most brokers. And so you did the smart thing. You teamed up with somebody who already has experience, and you're able to basically jump in feet first that direction. And I don't know, in a lot of ways, I mean, you went through, sounds like you went through a lot of the same amount of work that a lot of other people try to do, where you were analyzing deals, you were doing everything else, and you built the relationship, and then later on will come in as co-GP. So I love the story, and I think you're absolutely right. That is a great path, and that's something that a lot of people should pay attention to. So
yeah, and you're right. There's so much work involved, right? I mean, there's so many hats to wear. There's so many things to juggle, and these relationships take so much time to build. And as you alluded to, your credibility in this space is everything, right? And so it takes time to build that. And so a great way to do that is, again, aligning with successful people in your market and add value to them. Get involved.
So let's do a quick change of pace here. One question I like to ask everybody is, what is your big burning why? What motivates you? What drives you in this business?
Yeah, we alluded to this earlier, and for me, it's my family, it's my children, it's my wife, and it's my time. You realize at a certain point in your life that you're trading time for money, right? You go work for somebody else, they tell you when to be there, what time to be there, and what your time and skill set's worth. And if you're a father, most of you will understand this. It's like you have these moments in time where you look at your kids and you just think, wow, you can remember yesterday when you were holding them in their hand, and all of a sudden you blink and now they're driving and they're going to work themselves, and they don't want to be around mom and dad anymore. And as a parent, that's a gut punching moment, because you're like, that just is like a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
And I feel like as we get older, time seems to go by faster and faster. I remember my parents telling me that, and like, whatever. And now I'm sitting here reflecting, and it's such a true statement. And so for me, the burning why is controlling my time, right? How do I be the driver of my own ship, so to speak? And so my kids and my family are the really big motivation on why I'm out here grinding every day to get there.
Yeah, and I agree wholeheartedly in a lot of ways. I mean, I've got a 21-year-old daughter, and she's 22 in a couple of weeks, and a 19-year-old daughter. And what you said is absolutely true. You're holding them one day, and next day they're out of the house and on their own. But well, good. Yeah, I think your big burning why is something it resonates with a lot of people. Very similar to my own, is I wanted to be able to spend time with my family when I want to spend time with them, and not march to the beat of a different drummer. And that's same thing you're looking for, is to be able to control that more. Well, that's great. So quick question now, what's next for you guys?
We're still looking to add assets to our portfolio this year. We've gotten pretty close these past couple of months. We've landed in 3 best in finals. And so we're still submitting offers, still evaluating opportunities, still building relationships, which you should never stop doing in this business, right? And so we're always networking, engaging with other industry leaders and professionals, and just trying to find our way into other opportunities, whether it be our own or partnering with other people that could use some value add as well. So for us, by the end goal for the year, we're hoping to add another $20 million of assets to our portfolio. Fingers crossed that will come true, and just keep grinding away.
Nice. I love it. Now, are you only looking in Houston, or are you looking in other metros?
Yeah,
as
no,
well?
we're across Central Texas, East Tennessee, Kansas City. I think we love being in primary markets. We love, even though it's extremely difficult to break in, I love that the fundamentals that come along with primary markets, but there are some great opportunities in some secondary markets around some of these MSAs. So we do believe in diversifying, especially we did isolate ourselves just to one or two markets in the beginning, but once we just became so well ingrained in those markets and really built our footprint, we felt comfortable with diversifying and going outside and just modeling the same thing. So.
Yeah, and there's pros and cons both directions. I mean, when you're in Houston in the primary markets, sometimes you are one of 30 offers on the table. Yeah, and there's a reason there's 30 offers in metro and in primary markets, because they have the fundamentals. And you hit the nail on the head right there. You go off into secondary markets, and now instead of being 1 out of 30, you're 1 out of 8. So you may have a better chance of closing, but secondary markets may not have the same fundamentals. So it's pros and cons both directions. We live in the secondary market space, and that's where we built our business so far. But anyway, that said, let's shift gears a little bit. We'll bring Esteban on the line here. So Esteban's been spending the last 15 years in the industrial automation and process control space. He and his wife started their real estate investment journey 2 years ago with an out-of-state turnkey single-family property. And the original plan was to build a single-family portfolio, but they shifted to multifamily right now, looking in the Idaho and Utah markets. Incidentally, Esteban and I are somewhat neighbors now. Esteban's, you're out of Pocatello, right? Do us a favor, tell us about yourself, give us your background and history, and let us know who you are.
Yeah, well, I'm an Idaho native, born, raised here in Southeast Idaho. Grew up in a small town, about 4,000 population. Straight out of high school, I went into college. I acquired my first associate's degree in computer support, and then decided to continue my education and went into electronics. Got my second associate's in electrical mechanical technology, and that allowed me to pursue my career in my current W-2. I work for a potato processing facility, one of the largest companies, potato processing companies in the world right now. We have several processing locations across the Northwest, in Washington, Oregon, Idaho. We have a couple places in China, Holland, so all over the world. The wife and I were looking for ways to supplement our income and possibly potentially replace it. And we found real estate to be very lucrative. Yeah, we started our real estate career in, like you mentioned, the single family turnkey space. We were going to continue that route, and we found multifamily. I really enjoy podcasts, and I'm obviously a fan of yours.
Thanks.
We came across the Michael Blanc podcast, and he specializes in apartment syndications, and that really spoke to me. It really made sense, and we decided then to pursue the multifamily space. We ended up signing up for his mentoring program. We're working with a great mentor right now. It's a great program. We wouldn't be where we are right now without that program. So yeah.
And I did the same program, obviously, which is helped me tremendously. I think everybody who's been anywhere in the business has done it by partnering with somebody experienced. Cody did it one way, where he came in as a co-GP to partner with somebody. We leaned on mentors. The Four Oaks Capital guys. I mean, the four of us, when we had our first property under contract, we didn't have any GP experience when we did, but we were leaning on mentors the whole time, and that was the experience we brought to the table. So when we were talking to the brokers, we were leaning on our mentors' experience as well. Hey, we got this group, and together we have X amount of apartments. Like most people do, we ended up partnering with one of our mentors, just to be able to get the loan, be able to get the closing across the finish line. And that's it's a key, and it's something that I think is extremely valuable. It doesn't matter which way you find it. Doesn't matter if you pay to play for a mentor, you hustle and bring value. It's something that I think is a key ingredient to anybody's success. So wish you the best of luck, and probably see you in a couple of weeks. Are you going to his big conference in Dallas in 2 weeks?
We're planning on it. Yeah.
Okay, good. Have to fly, 1,500 miles to see you, even though you're, probably about 50 miles down the road. But eventually I'll get down there. So let's talk about your big burning why right now. I mean, we talked a little bit. I mean, you talked a little bit about, what you were doing a little bit, but let's boil down your big burning why. What is your big burning why?
Yeah, just like so many others, and Cody nailed it right on the head. It's that time freedom, time control. The older you get, the more valuable time becomes.
Mm-hmm.
And, we all know time is a very finite resource, and the goal is to have a little more control of that.
Yeah, nice. Control your time. Be with who you want to be and where you want to be when you want to do it. So, all right. Well, here comes my favorite part of the show. Esteban, we got Cody on the line. What do you want to ask him?
Yeah, my questions revolve around my favorite part of the syndication process, and that is the deal analysis. My first question is, Cody, when you first come across a deal, what key indicators do you typically gravitate towards to help determine whether it's a property worth pursuing?
So I have a 3-step process: market criteria, investment criteria, and then resources. Number one, you want to have an established market that you become an expert in, right? You want to know a market like the back of your hand. And this is going back to the conversation we were having a minute ago, Brian, where if you start out in too many markets, you never become an expert of one. It's going to take you a lot longer to really establish a footprint and understanding of that market. And if you make a wrong judgment call on a particular market, it could be very costly for you. So, my first thing is looking at a particular market to see is this a market that I even want to be in? Is it a primary market, secondary market, tertiary market, location, fundamentals of the market, everything from population to jobs to, migratory patterns, crime, all of those things you really want to have a good fundamental understanding for. So once I go through the market analysis and determine, is this a market that I like, and right now where we're at, we have our very defined markets, and anything outside of that, it just goes in the junk inbox. We don't even waste our time with it. Okay. Then the next thing is the investment criteria. And I spend some time looking at, what type of opportunity is this? I look at the size of the deal, the vintage. Is it a value add? Is it a core play? Again, location in the market that it's in and whatnot, and to see if that's a fit for us in our strategy. Right now, we do like, more of the stabilized assets that have a light value add component versus a deeper value add or reposition. That's just not our appetite right now. We don't want to be dealing with 1950s and 1960s buildings. We want to be in the 1980s space and above. We want to stay, for us, we're looking at 100 to 200 units. And, so if it's a 400 unit deal, I'm not going to waste my time. It's a 40 unit deal. I won't say that we won't look at it, but it doesn't go up on the priority list. So we definitely triage those deals through the investment criteria, through that analysis, right? And we'll go through more details, but high level. And then the last thing that we want to look at is resources, right? And this comes down to your own personal network and resources, right? And these are multi-million-dollar transactions. And if you don't have a database or network, if you don't have the liquidity, network, or experience to put these deals together, then you really have to evaluate kind of your approach. Do you reduce your search to fit whatever resources you have, or do you go build out your network and build the teams that you need to take on bigger deals? And so, but it's very, very important what that is, what that threshold is. If you're not in a position to take down a $20 million deal, again, your credibility is everything. So you don't want to be out there wasting brokers' time and trying to analyze deals, and then you get to a point where they realize that you're not a closer, right? So really looking at your own resources and figuring out what you have and what's your capacity. And the beautiful thing about that is if you do want to go bigger, go build your network around it. Go find the people around you that can help you do it. But you really want to have that defined as far as what is your capacity to close. So that's kind of the the high level funnel that we go through in looking at a deal. So, we have deals that hit our inbox all the time, like everybody else. And, I would argue that probably half of them end up in the junk folder, just going through that very simple analysis.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the triage you guys do. I mean, markets are huge. I think if you buy in the right market in the right time, I'm going to tread lightly on this one. It's almost hard to screw it up, is kind of how I say it. If the market's going the right direction, it's almost hard to screw up. So if you pick the markets right, you've got 50% of the deal already. And so Cody, I appreciate you saying that. That's half the battle. You pick the markets that you like based on the market fundamentals, but good solid 3-step process there. I like it.
Yeah. So my next question is revolves around your team. We always hear in real estate investing, it's always a team sport. What team members do you typically reach out to first off to help gather the information you need to properly analyze your deal?
Yeah. So as far as my internal team, I have 2 great partners. I've got my partner, Brian Alfaro, John Beatty at Blue Oak. And, collectively, again, we distribute the responsibilities amongst us, right? And so that's a very, very big help, because while I may be focusing on one aspect of the business, I know that John and Brian are tackling other aspects of the business. So things are always being worked on, improved on, and whatnot. So I think when you talk about building your team, build those partners who you really want to build a long-term existing relationship and work with over time. It's an absolute must in this space, I feel like. But then when it comes to the actual team around you itself, I would definitely encourage people to build relationships with industry professionals in the particular markets you're focused in, right? Whether that be lenders, property managers, title companies. I mean, there's a laundry list of team members you need, but I think in the immediate, especially when it comes to deal analysis, I would really put an emphasis on building relationships with a good property management team that has experience in your target markets, that are focused on the same type of opportunities that you're looking at, and that have a good reputation in the market. And one easy exercise to do is, when you're in a market, ask for referrals. Hey, who do you recommend for property management? And when you start hearing the same few names pop up, then that this is somebody that's reputable and well respected. And by the way, you want somebody that has that reputation, because you're going to need it for the lender side. They're going to be looking at those things as well, right? So the first 2 big relationships that I would put focus on is your property managers and your capital advisors, your capital markets teams, so your lenders and such. Because in when you do find an opportunity and you do go the exercise of evaluating your deals, and then you work with your property management team, that property management, they're great. They're your local experts in those markets, right? And so they can tell you a lot about that particular asset or that particular market. And if they've been present in the market for some time, you may even discover that they've had their hand in the management of those assets, before. And we've had some of those experiences as well. So, but once you get through that, when you go to work with your capital markets team, your lenders are going to be able to tell you, like, hey, is this qualified for agency debt? Are you going to have to go bridge? Is it too big and you have to go, small balance? And they can give you insights into current terms, especially right now. The markets are insanely cheap, but there's still a lot of debate on where treasuries go, which dictate rates and things like that. And so they can give you that up-to-date information on what's happening in the capital markets, which you need to be able to underwrite to, because the last thing that you want to do is make an incorrect assumption on how you're going to qualify your debt for this particular deal. So again, you should always build relationships with the team. But if I had to tell you, hey, who do you start with? Property managers and lenders, I would definitely lean very, very heavy to.
Yeah, and I agree. And I'll refer you back to Cody's answer to your previous question. You look at your resources as well. And if you don't have the net worth or the liquidity to be able to tackle these, because that's what lenders are looking for, then you're also looking for the right people to partner with as well. So, lot of good things in there. And, I think Cody hit the nail on the head as well. I mean, your property manager is going to be, the absolute key to your success. If you had to put it on one person or one company, it's the property manager. And, it's super hard to underwrite, super hard to analyze a deal without that current, somebody who can advise you on debt, the capital advisor as well.
You have to remember too, these are professionals that have access to data that you probably don't have access to, right? And they have resources at their disposal that they can allow you to use for your own analysis, which is going to be very, very important. And, listen, some of the subscriptions to some of these data that's available, it's very, very costly. It's very, very expensive, tens of thousands of dollars to some degree. And so lean in very heavily on those relationships, because you can get a lot of great access to some of the data that they have to make you, to help you improve your analysis in a particular market or asset types or such like that. So.
And I'll throw one thing in there, and a little plug on Cody. Listened to his podcast last night. He had a guest on that brought up the fact, he was a capital advisor. He brought up the fact that he calls 40 to 60 different lenders on a monthly basis, which saves you from having to call 40 to 60 yourself. You call one person who's able to link you up with the right lender for what you're trying to do.
I'm honored, Brian, that you listened to my show, buddy. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So I drive a lot. So when I drive, I got a podcast or I got an audiobook up. So just happened to be the Cody Laughlin and Brian Alfaro show yesterday. But all right, Esteban, what else have you got, man?
Yeah, so thank you for that. Those are great answers. What advice would you give to newbies in regard to keeping emotions in check when analyzing a deal? Especially for someone like me who's been working real hard trying to find the first deal, so that they don't end up fudging numbers and possibly just getting yourself in trouble.
I love that question. That's a fantastic question, by the way. So I have a few answers to that. And then what we'll do is we'll go back and tackle each one. So number one, education. Two, repetition. Number three, I would tell you, analyzing larger deals for practice. Okay. And so let's go back and tackle each one. The more that you continue to educate yourself, the better and more confident you're going to feel about your underwriting practices or analysis, right? I mean, the more that we become educated, obviously it's going to give us, it's going to open our horizons. It's going to give us more of that confidence to go out there and make great sound decisions or judgments, right? And the next thing I would tell you is repetition. And this is key. So, in learning a market in particular, or learning how deals are operated, the more that you do, the more that you learn, right? And if you're like me, I'm somebody, I love to get out there and put myself out there, and knowing I'm going to make a few mistakes, but you learn through mistakes, right? And so the more that you can analyze deals, the more that you can underwrite deals, it's going to make you a better analyzer, because you're going to be able to see trends. You're going to be able to see how different operators are doing things. You're going to be able to see different things that are particular to a particular market that you can identify. And so I think repetition is going to be important. And I mean, shoot, we've analyzed hundreds and hundreds of deals right now. And that's what it takes, just putting in that constant work. It's kind of like working out, right? You don't just go to the gym once a month and think that, you're going to be fit. It takes daily commitment. And so the same would be true for analyzing. And the last one, this is something that I've been recommending to a lot of people, is I would recommend starting out, if not solely, at least part of your analyzing practices, and analyzing bigger deals that are professionally owned and operated. And here's why I say that, because if you're just starting out and let's say you're looking at a mom and pop deal, those financials are going to look terrible. A lot of time they're going to be behind the napkin. A lot of time that you're going to get just a PDF form that has just a few little line items here and there. And it can be quite frustrating, especially if you don't know what you're looking at. Right. So when you get experience looking at larger deals that are professionally managed, that have good, clean profit and loss statements, you can really understand how to read those profit and loss statements and articulate the story, right? These profit and losses, they tell you the story of the deal. And so you can really dig in and see how these businesses are being operated, because these are small businesses. And then you can take that understanding and then go apply it to, the mom and pop owner. You can see, what's missing or what information you need to put that story together to analyze that. So I find that to be a very good practice. And, start out by looking at 100, 200 unit deals that are on the CBREs, Marcus Millichaps. You can download those financials all day long from their websites and just get familiar with reading those profit and loss statements. I think it'll really, really help you in understanding the financial part of that.
Yeah, that's solid. The one thing that I would emphasize is just knowing your criteria. The way to stay unemotional when you're analyzing is to pick your criteria before you start analyzing. And if you pick your criteria, then you compare it against your criteria, and it's a yes or no at that point. Does this meet my predetermined criteria? Yes or no. If you don't have that predetermined criteria, every single one comes in. It's like, man, I really want this, and I think you're a little more in danger of making the emotional decision that could be a lesson learned or could be a seminar. So,
can I piggyback off that real quick, Brian? And just
absolutely,
Esteban, listen, this is an industry that you have to have patience with, and you have to have discipline with, because like Brian just alluded to, if you don't know who you are as an investor, if you don't know what your investing criteria is and your investing thesis is, you can go down a lot of different rabbit holes, and you can spread yourself so thin to where you never really gain any momentum. So I think, to Brian's point, identify what that criteria is and just be disciplined enough to stick with it, no matter how long it takes you. Okay. Because people will end up pivoting or deviating from their criteria right when they're on the cusp of something, a breakthrough or an opportunity. So, just be willing to put your head down and know that there's always going to be deals coming. There's always going to be opportunities out there. So don't get frustrated when, you analyze 10 and none of them work out. That's okay. Just keep on going.
Yeah, just get better. Sharpen your pencil every single time, and the first time I've heard the analyze the bigger deals, and there's a lot of wisdom in that, because the smaller the property is, and usually the smaller properties, you don't get the big property management companies that are going to come in and run it super efficiently. And there's either a lot of expenses that don't hit the profit and loss statement, or there's a lot of expenses that, aren't in line with what a better management company would do. So, if you're looking at the bigger properties, you might see a couple line items that you're not going to see on the smaller ones. And when you do, you got to start scratching your head and thinking, okay, is this something that's just not on the profit and loss statement? I mean, maybe there's a marketing budget on the larger ones, there's not on the smaller ones. Hey, guess what? They're probably marketing. Where is that money? Is that on the statement or is it not on the statement? And, sometimes these smaller property management companies, aren't as good at getting things on the statement. That's something we found from a lot of experience, where we'd get charged stuff and it doesn't hit the statement. So anyway, my 2 cents on that one. A little frustration on my part too, but yeah, there you go. I'm not saying it was specifically marketing expense that didn't hit our, line items, but that's beside the point.
Yeah. Well, when you're starting out, when you're looking at opportunities, you don't know what you don't know, right? And I think if you're looking at some of those opportunities that don't have all the right pieces or don't have all the right information, it can leave you, number one, very frustrated, but it could leave you missing out some pieces that you need for your own analysis to determine, is this going to be a good, sound opportunity for you? And so I think that's why, having that just general business understanding of how these things work will be a benefit to you.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are about out of time. So I got one question to, clean up everything for each of you. And Cody, you get to go first. Question is, how can listeners learn more about you?
Well, Brian, I want to thank you again so much for being on. This has been awesome. Esteban, Great to connect, man. Keep crushing it. Just keep putting the work. It's awesome. So if you want to get connected with me, you can check me out on LinkedIn. I'm very, very active on LinkedIn. Or you can reach out to me via email, cody@blueoakinvest.com. If you love podcasting and whatnot, you can check out our podcast, the Prosperity Through Multifamily Real Estate Investing Podcast. We've had our good friend, Mr. Brian Briscoe, on here recently. That episode will be popping out pretty soon. So check us out there. And if you're in the Houston area and love to do some live networking, you can check us out at the South Texas Multifamily and More Facebook group, where we have our live and virtual meetup events that happen at the first, second, and last Thursday of every month. So, all
right, live meetups. Wow, what are those? Yeah, amazing. So we'll put all that links to all those in the show notes: email address, website, Facebook group, and LinkedIn profile. So if you guys are interested, and I definitely encourage you to check it out. Podcast too. That's something else you mentioned, but just hit the show notes. tap in this magical thing called the internet will whisk you away. So Esteban, your turn. How can listeners learn more about you?
Yeah, I'm also on LinkedIn. That'd be a great way to get a hold of me, or good old fashioned email. Email me at esteban.cardenas@carcorpcapital.com.
All right. And we'll also have links to those in the show notes as well. Thank you so much to the two of you for coming on the show today. I very much appreciate your time. And this is going to be an amazing little episode.